Look, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I'm some kind of saint or whatever, because honestly, I'm just as messed up as the rest of you reading this at 3 in the morning while you're supposed to be working on that presentation due tomorrow. But I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating me alive for the past 6 months, and I literally cannot sleep anymore without seeing his face, hearing his voice, remembering the way he looked at me like I was the only person who existed in his entire universe. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride, and I promise you, it's not going to end the way you think it will. His name was Marcus. Well, is Marcus, because obviously he's still alive, still breathing, still walking around that godforsaken town like he didn't completely wreck me twice in one lifetime. We met when I was 16, back when I thought wearing Hollister head to toe was the pinnacle of fashion, and when getting a text back within 5 minutes meant true love. He was 17, a senior when I was a junior at Westbridge Academy, this pretentious private school in Connecticut, where everyone's parents were either hedge fund managers or owned pharmaceutical companies or whatever. My dad was old money, the kind that came with a trust fund I couldn't touch until I was 25, and a last name that opened doors before I even had to knock. Marcus's family was new money, the kind of still smelled like ambition and desperation, the kind that tried too hard at the country club and bought their way into the right circles. I remember the exact moment I fell for him. It was October, and we were at some ridiculous fundraiser gala that our school forced us to attend, the kind where they served sparkling cider to the minors and everyone's parents ate drunk on champagne while pretending to care about underprivileged youth or saving the whales or whatever cause was trendy that year. I was standing by the French doors leading to the garden, trying to escape my mother's passive-aggressive comments about my posture, when he just appeared next to me like some kind of beautiful apparition. He was wearing this perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His dark hair was slightly messy in that way that looked effortless but definitely took effort. And he had these eyes. God, these impossibly deep brown eyes that seemed to see right through all the bullshit, all the pretense, straight into whatever pathetic little soul I had. "You look like you'd rather be literally anywhere else," he said, and his voice had this low, smooth quality that made my stomach flip. I was 16 and stupid, and I'd never felt anything like that before. "I'm Marcus." "Everyone knows who you are," I replied, trying to sound cool and aloof, like I'd practiced in my mirror 1,000 times. "You're the guy who got into Yale early decision. Congratulations," or whatever. He laughed, and it wasn't the fake laugh everyone did at these events, the practiced social laugh that said nothing. It was real. "And you're Scarlett Ashford, the girl who told Mrs. Henderson her interpretation of The Great Gatsby was classist garbage in front of the entire AP Lit class." I felt my face get hot. She deserved it. Daisy was a coward and Gatsby was delusional, and everyone just romanticizes their toxic situation because the prose is pretty. "See, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you," Marcus said, leaning against the doorframe in this casual way that somehow made him look even more attractive. "Everyone here is so busy performing their designated role, the perfect daughter, the star athlete, the future politician, but you actually say what you think." And just like that, I was gone. Completely, utterly, hopelessly gone. We started dating 3 weeks later, after he'd shown up at my locker every single day with coffee from this boutique place downtown, always made exactly how I liked it, even though I'd never told him, black with 2 sugars and a splash of cream. He'd leave little notes in my textbooks, quotes from books he thought I'd like, or just random observations about his day that made me laugh. We'd drive around in his Range Rover listening to indie music that we both pretended to understand, talking about everything and nothing, making out at overlooks where you could see the entire valley spread out below us like a carpet of lights. He took me to New York for the weekend, and we stayed at the Plaza because of course we did, and we walked through Central Park, and he held my hand and told me I was the most interesting person he'd ever met. He said I made him want to be more than just another legacy admission, more than just his father's son, more than just the expected trajectory of prep school to Ivy League to investment banking to a boring marriage to someone from the right family.
I fell in love with him so hard and so fast that it physically hurt, like actual pain in my chest whenever we were apart. Like I couldn't breathe properly unless he was in the same room. My friends said I was being dramatic, that it was just infatuation, that everyone feels crazy about their first real boyfriend. But I knew it was different. I knew because he looked at me the same way, because he told me he loved me first, because he talked about our future like it was inevitable, like we were inevitable. We dated for 8 months, 8 perfect, intense, consuming months where I genuinely believed I'd found my person at 16 years old, where I'd already started imagining what our wedding would look like, what our apartment in Manhattan would be like when we were both in college, what our kids would look like. I know, I was insane. But when you're young and in love and you've never had your heart broken before, you think your relationship is different, special, immune to all the statistics about high school relationships failing. Then May happened. His graduation happened, and suddenly Marcus was talking about Yale and new beginnings and how maybe we should take a break for the summer, see how we feel when I visit him at school. I remember sitting in his Range Rover in my driveway, the engine running, my entire world crumbling while he explained in this gentle, patronizing voice how we were so young and how he'd always care about me, but how maybe we'd gotten too serious too fast. I was crying so hard I could barely breathe, mascara running down my face, begging him in this pathetic voice that still makes me cringe to remember it, asking what I did wrong, what I could fix, promising I'd be better. "It's not you, Scar," he said, using the nickname that suddenly felt like a weapon. "You're perfect. You're going to do amazing things, but I need to figure out who I am without being part of an us." Such absolute bullshit. I found out 2 weeks later from Ashley Morrison, this girl who lived to spread gossip, that Marcus had already started dating someone else, this girl named Priya who was going to Yale too, whose father was some Silicon Valley mogul. They'd apparently been talking for months. Months, while he was telling me he loved me, while he was making plans with me, while he was taking my virginity in his childhood bedroom while his parents were at their summer house in the Hamptons. I was just the high school girlfriend, the practice run, the girl you date before you get to college and meet the one you're actually supposed to be with. I spent that entire summer absolutely destroyed, like couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just crying in my bed, listening to sad music and stalking his Instagram like a psycho, watching him post pictures with her, watching him live the life he'd promised we'd have together. My mother said I was being melodramatic, that I'd forget about him in a month. My father actually seemed concerned but didn't know how to help because emotional intelligence wasn't exactly his strong suit. My friends tried to take me out, set me up with other guys, but I just felt numb. Eventually, I did what everyone said I should do. I moved on, or at least I performed moving on convincingly enough that people stopped asking if I was okay. I went to Dartmouth, I dated other guys, I built a life. I graduated with honors, got my MBA from Wharton, landed this incredible position at a venture capital firm in Manhattan where I made ridiculous amounts of money and wore designer suits and attended charity galas just like the ones I used to hate as a teenager. I got engaged to this perfectly nice guy named Andrew who checked all the boxes. Ivy League educated, came from the right family, had the right job, said the right things. We had this beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park. We vacationed in Aspen and the Maldives. We were featured in Town & Country's 30 Under 30 list. On paper, my life was perfect. But I never really forgot about Marcus. He was always there, lurking in the back of my mind like a ghost, like unfinished business. I'd hear a song we used to listen to and feel this ache. I'd see someone who looked like him from behind, and my heart would race before I realized it wasn't him. I never looked him up, though, never let myself go down that rabbit hole, because I knew it would destroy me all over again. Then came the Thornton wedding. I almost didn't go. It was in Connecticut, at some estate I'd been to a million times for events just like this one, and I'd been working insane hours on this deal that was about to close. But Andrew wanted to go because James Thornton was one of his fraternity brothers, and I was supposed to be the supportive fiancé who showed up and smiled and made small talk about interest rates and the Hamptons real estate market. So I put on this Alexander McQueen dress that cost more than my first car, did my hair and makeup perfectly, put on my engagement ring that I honestly felt nothing about except vague obligation, and drove up with Andrew in his Tesla while he talked about some merger he was working on, and I pretended to listen. The wedding was beautiful in that manufactured way that expensive weddings always are. Everything white and gold and dripping with roses that probably cost $50 each. I was standing at the bar, ordering my second glass of champagne and mentally calculating how early we could leave without being rude, when I heard a voice behind me that made every single cell in my body freeze. Scarlett Ashford. Holy shit. I turned around, and there he was. Marcus, a decade older but somehow even more attractive, wearing this perfectly cut navy suit, his hair a little shorter than he used to wear it, those same impossible eyes looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a second, I literally forgot how to speak, like my brain just completely short-circuited, like someone had unplugged it and forgotten to plug it back in. Marcus, I finally managed.
Good. Such an inadequate word for what he looked like, for what seeing him was doing to me. We made small talk for a few minutes, the kind of polite conversation you have with someone you used to know. He told me he was living in Boston, working at some tech startup that had recently gone public and made him absurdly wealthy. He asked about my job and seemed genuinely impressed when I told him about my position. And then he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you here with someone?" "My fiancé," I said, and I swear I saw something flicker across his face, something that looked almost like pain. "Andrew, he's around here somewhere." "Right," Marcus said, and there was this long, loaded pause. "Congratulations. That's great. Really great. Are you married?" I asked, even though I immediately regretted it, even though I didn't want to know the answer. "Yeah," he said, and he wasn't smiling anymore. 7 years now. Her name's Priya. We have 2 kids. Priya. Of course it was Priya, the girl he'd left me for, the girl who was supposed to be temporary but apparently wasn't. I felt sick, but I forced myself to smile. "That's wonderful," I lied. "I'm happy for you." "Are you, though?" he asked quietly, and the way he was looking at me made it impossible to breathe. "Happy, I mean. You look happy." "I am," I said, another lie that felt like ashes in my mouth. My life is exactly what I always wanted it to be. He nodded slowly, like he didn't believe me at all. "That's good. You deserve to be happy, Scar. I always wanted that for you." The nickname hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't heard it in 10 years. Nobody else called me that. It was his name for me, something that belonged to us, to what we used to be. "I should find Andrew," I said, desperate to escape before I did something stupid, before the careful walls I'd built around that part of my heart completely collapsed. "It was good seeing you." "Wait," he said, reaching out like he wanted to touch me but stopping himself. "Can we talk? Like, actually talk? There's so much I want to say to you." "Marcus, you're married, I'm engaged. There's nothing to talk about." "That's not true, and you know it," he said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. "Seeing you again, it's like no time has passed at all. I can't just let you walk away again." "You let me walk away 10 years ago," I said, and there was more bitterness in my voice than I'd intended. "I was an idiot," he said intensely. "I was a stupid kid who made the biggest mistake of his life. I've thought about you every single day for the past decade, Scarlett. Every single day." This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I'd moved on. I'd built a life. I was engaged to a good man who loved me and wanted to marry me and give me the future I was supposed to want. I was finally past this, past him, past the girl who'd cried herself to sleep for an entire summer over Marcus, whoever the hell his last name was.
Except I wasn't, because standing there, looking at him, feeling the way my entire body responded to his presence, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd never actually gotten over him at all. I'd just gotten very, very good at pretending. Give me your number, please, just so we can catch up properly, as friends. We were never friends, I said. No, he agreed, his eyes never leaving mine. We weren't. I should have said no. I should have walked away right then, found Andrew, gone back to my perfectly planned life, and never looked back. That's what a smart person would have done. That's what a good person would have done. But I've never claimed to be particularly smart or good, especially not when it comes to Marcus. So I gave him my number, watched him type it into his phone, and felt the ground beneath my perfectly constructed life start to crack.
He texted me 3 hours later, right when Andrew and I were driving back to the city. My phone lit up with an unknown number, and I just knew it was him before I even looked at the message. I meant what I said. Seeing you tonight changed everything. I stared at those words for a solid 5 minutes, while Andrew droned on about how James's new wife seemed nice, but a little young for him, how the band was mediocre, how he thought we should consider that menu for our own wedding. Our wedding. The one we'd been planning in this vague, theoretical way for the past year, the one that was supposed to happen next spring at my parents' estate in Connecticut, the one that would be featured in Vogue and attended by everyone who mattered, and would cement our position as one of those power couples that everyone envied. I should have deleted the message. I should have blocked his number. I should have told Andrew right then and there that I'd run into my high school ex and he'd been inappropriate and I never wanted to see him again. Instead, I waited until Andrew fell asleep next to me that night in our king-sized bed with the fret sheets and the view of Central Park, and I texted back. "You can't say things like that to me. You're married. You have kids." His response came within seconds, like he'd been waiting by his phone. "I know. I'm not proud of it, but I can't stop thinking about you. I haven't been able to stop since I saw you at the bar. Tell me you don't feel it too." I did feel it. That was the problem. I felt it so intensely that it scared me. This pull toward him that was just as strong as it had been when I was 16, maybe even stronger, because now it came with all this history, all this longing, all these years of wondering, what if? "It doesn't matter what I feel," I typed back. "This can't happen." "Then why did you give me your number?" I didn't have a good answer for that. Or rather, I had an answer, but it wasn't one I wanted to admit to myself. So I put my phone down and tried to sleep, and failed miserably, because all I could think about was the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd said my name, the way my entire body had responded to his presence, like it had been waiting 10 years for exactly that moment. We texted every day after that. Nothing overtly inappropriate at first, just catching up, filling each other in on the past decade. He told me about his startup, how it had nearly failed 3 times before finally taking off, how he'd made more money than he'd ever imagined, but somehow still felt empty. He told me about his kids, a daughter who was 6 and a son who was 4, and I could hear the love in his words, even through text, but also something else, something sad. He told me about Boston, about his house in Cambridge, about his life that looked perfect on paper, but felt hollow. I told him about my job, about the deals I was working on, about the rush of closing a successful investment. I told him about traveling, about the places I'd been, about my apartment and my life in Manhattan. I didn't tell him much about Andrew, and he didn't ask. It was like we'd both silently agreed that our current partners existed in some parallel dimension that we didn't have to acknowledge. 3 weeks in, he asked if he could see me. Not for anything inappropriate, he said, just coffee, just to talk in person. He had to come to New York for business anyway, just for the day, and wouldn't it be nice to catch up properly? I knew it was a terrible idea. I knew I was playing with fire, but I said yes anyway because, apparently, I'm incapable of making good decisions where Marcus is concerned. We met at this coffee shop in Soho. the kind of place that serves $15 lattes and has exposed brick walls and vintage furniture. I got there first and spent 10 minutes fixing my hair and reapplying my lipstick and wondering what the hell I was doing. I'd told Andrew I was having lunch with a college friend. The lie had come so easily, it scared me. When Marcus walked in, my heart literally stopped. He was wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, and he looked tired but happy. We talked for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 4 minutes. We talked about everything and nothing, about our families and our friends and our careers and our dreams. We talked about high school, about the good parts, carefully avoiding the part where he broke my heart into a million pieces. We talked about books and movies and music and politics. He made me laugh so hard I nearly spit out my coffee. I told him stories that I'd never told anyone else. It felt like coming home, like finding a part of myself I'd lost and forgotten I was missing. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, as the afternoon light started to fade and I realized I was going to be late getting back to the office. "My marriage, it's not good, Scarlett. It hasn't been good for a long time." "Marcus, don't," I said, because I knew where this was going and I knew I wasn't strong enough to hear it. "No, listen to me," he insisted, reaching across the table and taking my hand. And the moment our skin touched, it was like electricity. I married Priya because it made sense, because our families liked each other, because we went to Yale together, because everyone expected it. But I never loved her the way I loved you. I never even came close. "You can't do this," I whispered, but I didn't pull my hand away. "I'm not trying to ruin your life or mine," he said. "I'm just being honest. Seeing you again made me realize that I've been living this half-life, going through the motions, pretending to be happy, when really I've just been numb. You're the only person who ever made me feel alive." I should have left right then. I should have told him he was being ridiculous, that we were different people now, that what we had was ancient history. Instead, I sat there holding his hand and feeling tears prick my eyes because I knew exactly what he meant. I felt it too, this sense that I'd been sleepwalking through my own life, that everything I'd built was just an elaborate performance, that the only time I'd ever felt truly, completely myself was when I was with him. "I can't be the reason your marriage ends," I said. "I can't be that person." "You're not the reason," he said gently. "My marriage was over long before I saw you again. You're just making me brave enough to admit it." We didn't kiss that day. We didn't do anything physical beyond holding hands, but something shifted between us, some unspoken agreement that we were going to pursue this, whatever this was, consequences be damned. I started seeing him every time he came to New York, which became more and more frequent. He'd text me his schedule, and I'd rearrange my entire day to meet him, making up elaborate excuses to Andrew about client meetings and networking events. We'd meet in hotels, not to have sex, but just to talk, to be alone, together, to exist in this bubble where the rest of our lives didn't matter. We'd order room service and lie on the bed, fully clothed, and talk for hours. He'd tell me about his daughter's dance recitals and his son's obsession with dinosaurs, and I'd feel this weird pang because I was falling in love with his life, with the idea of us, with this alternate universe where we'd never broken up, and those were our kids, and we were the family we were supposed to be. 2 months after that first coffee, we finally kissed. We were in his hotel room at the Carlyle, and he was telling me some story about a disastrous board meeting, and I was laughing. And then suddenly, we weren't laughing anymore. We were just looking at each other with this intensity that felt dangerous. And then he leaned in and kissed me, and I kissed him back, and it was like the entire world exploded. I should have ended it with Marcus right then. I should have ended it with Andrew. I should have blown up my entire life and dealt with the consequences like an adult. Instead, I did the cowardly thing. I kept seeing both of them. I kept living this double life, perfect fiancé by day, desperate mistress by night. Marcus started coming to New York 3 or 4 times a week, which should have been suspicious, but apparently Priya was too busy with the kids and her own life to question it. Or maybe she knew and didn't care, I don't know. I didn't let myself think about her too much, because if I did, I'd have to confront what I was actually doing.
He'd text me constantly, sweet messages and dirty messages and everything in between. He'd send me flowers at the office with cryptic cards that Andrew never questioned. He'd tell me about looking at apartments in Manhattan, about talking to divorce lawyers, about making plans for our future together. And I believed him. God help me, I completely believed him. 3 months into our affair, Andrew proposed that we move up the wedding date. He wanted to get married in the fall instead of waiting until spring, said he didn't see the point in waiting when we both knew what we wanted. I panicked and made up some excuse about work being too busy, about wanting to enjoy being engaged, about not wanting to rush. He seemed confused but agreed, and I felt like the worst person alive. That night, I met Marcus at our usual hotel. I'd had 2 glasses of wine before I even got there because I needed the courage to tell him what was happening, to make him give me a concrete timeline, to force his hand. Andrew wants to move up the wedding, I said as soon as I walked through the door. Marcus's face went dark. What did you tell him? That we should wait. But Marcus, I can't keep doing this. I need to know when you're actually going to leave her. I need a plan. Soon, he said, pulling me into his arms. I promise, soon. I just need to figure out the right way to do it. The lawyers say I need to be strategic about timing because of the custody arrangement. You've been saying soon for 3 months. I know, and I'm sorry, he said, kissing my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. But this is complicated, Scarlett. I have to think about my kids. I can't just blow up their lives without having everything in place. It made sense. It all made sense when he explained it. So I let him undress me, let him make love to me, let him whisper promises about our future, while I tried not to think about the fact that he'd go home to her afterward, would climb into bed next to his wife, would wake up in the morning and have breakfast with his kids like he wasn't actively planning to abandon them. He didn't text me the next day, or the day after that, or the day after that. A week went by with nothing but one brief message. She's okay, but it was serious. Need time. Love you. 2 weeks. 3 weeks. I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd text him and he wouldn't respond for days. When he did respond, it was always brief, always apologetic, always asking for more time. A month after Priya's hospitalization, I finally called him. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I texted him that I needed to talk to him immediately, or I was going to show up at his house in Boston. He called me back within an hour. I can't do this anymore, he said, and his voice was different, flat and defeated. Those 6 words that I'd been terrified of hearing, but somehow never actually believed I'd hear, because Marcus loved me, right? Marcus was leaving his wife for me. Marcus had put an offer on an apartment for us. Marcus had promised me a future. People don't just change their minds about things like that. Except apparently they do. What do you mean you can't do this anymore? My voice came out sharp, defensive, like if I sounded angry enough, I could prevent what was coming. Priya almost died, Scarlett. Her heart just stopped. They had to use the defibrillator 3 times. The doctor said if she'd been anywhere else, if she hadn't been near the hospital when it happened, she'd be dead. I'm sorry that happened to her, I really am, but what does that have to do with us? Everything, he said, and I could hear him choking up. It has everything to do with us. She's the mother of my children. I can't leave her now, not after this, not when she almost died. So what, you're just going to stay married to someone you don't love because she had a medical emergency? That's insane, Marcus. It's not that simple. It literally is that simple, I said, and I was starting to panic now, really panic, because this couldn't be happening, not after everything, not after I'd upended my entire life for him. You told me you loved me. You told me you were going to leave her. You bought us an apartment, for God's sake. I thought I could, he said quietly. I really thought I could do it, but seeing her in that hospital bed, seeing my kids so scared, seeing how fragile everything is, I can't be the person who destroys our family. I can't do that to them. But you can do this to me? I was crying now, ugly crying, not caring how I sounded. You just throw me away again, just like you did 10 years ago? What was this whole year, Marcus? What was any of it? It was real. Everything between us was real. I do love you, Scarlett. I'll probably always love you. But I have responsibilities. I have kids who need me, a wife who almost died, and I can't just walk away from that because of how I feel about you. You're a coward, I spat. You were a coward when you were 18, and you're a coward now. You want to have it all, the perfect family and the mistress on the side, but you're too scared to actually make a choice. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave you everything, Marcus. I've been lying to everyone in my life for a year because of you. I've been planning a future with you. I trusted you when you said you were going to leave her. And now you're just, what, backing out? Just like that? I'm so sorry, he said, and he was crying too now. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could do it. I really did. But I can't. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the year I don't know what else to say. Then don't say anything, I told him. Just go back to your wife and your perfect life and pretend I never existed. That seems to be what you're good at. I hung up before he could respond, and then I threw my phone across the room and watched it shatter against the wall. Then I collapsed on my bedroom floor and cried harder than I'd cried since I was 16 years old, since the last time Marcus had decided I wasn't worth choosing. The next few weeks were a blur. I moved through my life like a zombie, going through the motions but not really present. I smiled at the right times, laughed at the right jokes, attended the right meetings, and said the right things. But inside, I was completely hollow. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and removed something vital, something I needed to survive. Andrew noticed, of course he noticed. "Are you okay?" he'd ask, concerned and caring and completely oblivious to the fact that I'd been cheating on him for a year with the love of my life who'd just dumped me for the second time. "Just tired," I'd say. "Work's been crazy." I started drinking too much. Wine with dinner that turned into half a bottle, then a whole bottle, then 2 bottles, and some whiskey for good measure. I'd lie in bed at night completely wasted, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Marcus with his wife, wondering if he thought about me, wondering if he missed me, wondering if any of it had been real or if I'd just been a convenient distraction from his failing marriage. My mother called and asked when Andrew and I were going to set a date. "You've been engaged for 2 years, darling. People are starting to talk." I wanted to scream at her that I didn't care what people were talking about, that I'd been in love with someone else, that I'd almost left Andrew for a married man who'd promised me everything and delivered nothing. Instead, I told her we'd set a date soon and hung up before she could press further. Marcus texted me once, 3 weeks after our last conversation. "I think about you every day. I hope you're okay. I'm so sorry for everything." I stared at that message for hours. Part of me wanted to respond, wanted to tell him I wasn't okay, wanted to beg him to reconsider, wanted to make him feel as destroyed as I felt. But I didn't respond. I just deleted the message and tried to pretend it never existed. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't just affect your romantic life. It seeps into everything. My work suffered. I lost a major deal because I wasn't focused enough during negotiations. My boss called me into his office and asked if everything was all right, said my performance had been slipping, said I needed to get it together or I'd lose my position. I nodded and apologized and promised to do better. But inside, I was thinking that I didn't care about any of it anymore. The career I'd worked so hard to build suddenly seemed meaningless. My friendships suffered. I canceled plans constantly, stopped answering texts, stopped pretending to care about their problems. Ashley, my closest friend from college, finally confronted me over brunch. "What's going on with you?" she demanded. "You've been completely MIA for months. You look like hell. Is it Andrew? Did something happen?" "Nothing happened," I lied, pushing my eggs Benedict around my plate. "I'm just stressed."
Bullshit, she said bluntly. I've known you for 10 years, Scarlett. This isn't stress. This is something else. Talk to me. And I almost did. I almost told her everything, the whole sordid story, but I couldn't. Because if I said it out loud, if I admitted what I'd done, it would become real in a way I wasn't ready to face. So I just shook my head and changed the subject. And I saw the hurt in her eyes, but I couldn't help her understand what I couldn't understand myself. The worst part was Andrew. Sweet, devoted, completely faithful Andrew, who'd never done anything except love me and plan a future with me and try to make me happy. He'd bring me coffee in bed. He'd rub my shoulders when I seemed tense. He'd try to cheer me up with surprises and date nights and all the things a good fiancé does. And every kind gesture felt like a knife because I didn't deserve any of it. I didn't deserve him. I started thinking about just telling him everything, just confessing and dealing with the consequences. At least then I'd feel like less of a fraud. At least then the guilt might stop eating me alive. But every time I worked up the courage, I'd look at his hopeful face and chicken out. 2 months after Marcus ended things, I did something really stupid. I got drunk at a work event and ended up making out with a colleague in a bathroom. It didn't mean anything. I didn't even like him that much. But I wanted to feel something other than this crushing grief. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be attracted to someone else, that Marcus hadn't completely ruined me for everyone else. It didn't work. I felt disgusting afterward, even more disgusted with myself than I already was. I went home and scrubbed my skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of being a person I didn't recognize anymore. I started seeing a therapist, not because I wanted to, but because I was having panic attacks at work and I needed to get my shit together or I was going to lose my job. I told her a heavily edited version of the truth, leaving out the part about the affair, focusing on general anxiety and stress and relationship confusion. It sounds like you're not happy in your current relationship, she observed during our third session. I don't know if I'm capable of being happy in any relationship, I replied. Why do you think that is? Because I'm fundamentally broken, I said, and I meant it. Because I make terrible choices and hurt people and can't seem to move on from someone who clearly doesn't want me. Are you in love with someone else? She asked gently. I couldn't answer her. I just started crying, and she handed me tissues and waited patiently for me to pull myself together. 3 months after Marcus ended things, Andrew planned this elaborate weekend in the Hamptons. He'd rented a house, invited all our friends, planned activities and dinners and all sorts of coupley things that I would normally hate but had always pretended to enjoy for his sake. I didn't want to go. The thought of spending an entire weekend pretending to be happy, pretending to be in love, pretending to be someone I wasn't, made me want to die. But I couldn't think of a good excuse, so I went. It was torture. Everyone was so happy, so in love, so excited about their lives and their futures. Ashley was there with her new boyfriend, who she was clearly crazy about. Another couple had just gotten engaged. Everyone kept asking when Andrew and I were finally going to set a date, kept making jokes about us being eternal fiancés, kept assuming we were just as happy as they were.
The last night, we had this big dinner on the beach. Someone had set up lanterns, and there was wine and laughter, and the ocean was doing that thing where it looks like liquid silver in the moonlight. It should have been perfect. It should have been one of those moments you remember forever. Instead, I felt like I was watching it all from very far away, like I was a ghost observing someone else's life. Andrew stood up to make a toast. He was slightly drunk, smiling in that goofy way he does when he's happy. I just want to say how grateful I am for all of you, he said, raising his glass, and especially grateful for this woman right here. He pulled me up next to him, and I wanted to sink into the sand and disappear.
"Scarlett, you're the smartest, most beautiful, most incredible person I know. I can't wait to marry you and spend the rest of my life making you happy." Everyone cheered and clinked glasses, and I stood there with a smile plastered on my face, feeling absolutely nothing. No love, no happiness, no excitement about our future, just this vast emptiness where those feelings should have been. That night, lying next to Andrew while he slept peacefully, I had a moment of absolute clarity. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep lying to him, couldn't keep pretending, couldn't marry someone I didn't love just because it was easier than being alone. It wasn't fair to him, and it wasn't fair to me. I decided I was going to end things with Andrew, not because I had any hope of getting back together with Marcus. That ship had crashed and burned spectacularly, but because staying with Andrew was cruel, because he deserved someone who loved him the way he loved them, who was excited about their future together, who didn't spend every night wishing they were someone else, somewhere else, living a completely different life. I was going to break up with him as soon as we got back to the city. I was going to be honest, or at least honest-ish. I wouldn't tell him about Marcus, that would just be needlessly cruel, but I'd tell him that I wasn't in love with him anymore, that I couldn't marry him, that he deserved better. I felt this weird sense of relief once I'd made the decision, like I could finally breathe again, like I was finally going to do one good thing after months of being a terrible person. Then my phone buzzed at 2 in the morning, a text from an unknown number. "This is Priya Chen. I think we need to talk about my husband." I stared at that message for a solid minute, my heart absolutely racing. How did she get my number? How did she know? What did she know? Another message came through. "I know everything, Scarlett. Marcus confessed. I'd like to meet with you this week. There are things you need to know." I sat up in bed, careful not to wake Andrew, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt anyone. Just meet with me, Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'll send you the address." I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there in the dark trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do, what Priya could possibly want to tell me, why Marcus had confessed, what this all meant. At 6 in the morning, I got another text, this time from Marcus. "I'm so sorry. Priya found my phone. She knows everything. Please don't meet with her. She's not stable right now. Just ignore her messages." But I couldn't ignore her messages, because after everything I'd done, after all the lying and sneaking around and being complicit in the betrayal of this woman, I owed her at least a conversation. I owed her the truth, or whatever version of the truth I was capable of telling. So on Tuesday at 2 p.m., I found myself walking into a cafe in Midtown, looking for a woman I'd only seen in Instagram photos, a woman whose husband I'd been sleeping with for a year, a woman who had every right to hate me and probably wanted to throw hot coffee in my face. She was sitting at a corner table, and she was beautiful in person.
"Scarlett," she said, and her voice was calm, controlled, nothing like I'd expected. "Thank you for coming. Please sit down." I sat, feeling like I was about to be executed, which honestly would have been less painful than whatever this conversation was going to be. My hands were sweating and my heart was hammering so hard I thought I might actually pass out right there in this bougie cafe surrounded by people having normal Tuesday afternoon coffee dates. "I'm sorry," I blurted out before she could say anything else. "I know that doesn't mean anything. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." She held up one perfectly manicured hand. "Please don't. I didn't ask you here for your apologies. I asked you here because there are things you need to know about my husband, things he clearly never told you." "I don't understand." Priya took a sip of her tea, completely composed, like we were discussing the weather instead of her husband's infidelity. "Marcus has done this before. Multiple times, actually. You're not the first woman he's had an affair with during our marriage. You're just the most recent." I felt like she'd slapped me. "What?"
There was a woman in San Francisco 3 years ago. She worked at a venture capital firm, actually, like you. He told her the same things he told you, I imagine. That our marriage was dead, that he was going to leave me, that she was the love of his life. He carried on with her for almost 8 months before I found out. Then there was a woman in Chicago before that, a lawyer. Same story, same promises. And before her, there was someone else. I've honestly lost count. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be true. Marcus loved me. What we had was different, special, real. You're lying. I wish I were, she said, and for the first time I saw real emotion flicker across her face. But I have emails, text messages, hotel receipts going back years. I've hired private investigators multiple times. I know more about my husband's extramarital activities than I ever wanted to know. Then why are you still with him? I demanded, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. If he's done this so many times, if you know he's a serial cheater, why the hell haven't you left him? Because I was stupid, she said simply. Because I loved him, because I kept believing him when he said it would never happen again, that each woman was different, that he'd made a mistake, but he really wanted to work on our marriage. Because we have children together and I wanted to keep our family intact. Because leaving meant admitting that my entire adult life had been built on a foundation of lies, and I wasn't ready to face that. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something. I wasn't going to show you this. Marcus begged me not to, but you deserve to know the truth. She turned the phone toward me. It was a text thread between Marcus and some woman named Jennifer.